everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar, and I am delighted to welcome you to this, our last podcast before Christmas. And joining me today to make merry while we discuss a match that probably should have been a lot merrier than it turned out to be was, first of all, Adam.
Hello, I wasn't expecting to be first there. Hi.
Well, there you go. Sometimes life brings out these pleasant surprises for you. And also joining, making up a very strong team today, is Cammy.
Good afternoon, gents. A pleasure to be on.
Rangers took on Dundee at the weekend. Obviously, the row all week about the disgraceful decision not to award Rangers what, in all likelihood, would have been a cup-winning penalty had rumbled on, but it was back to league action, and we welcomed Dundee to Ibrox. The manager named a very attacking lineup. Adam, I think he has settled on that system and those players for matches at home to most of the sides in the Premier League, which I'm in agreement with. Yep. And let's start then with the team before we get into it. One of the things which I think has maybe become clear in the last few weeks is the midfield, and that is that he's kind of rehabilitated Diamandi in that position to sit next to Raskin, who has been in best form. That means no place at the moment for Connor Barron, but the manager has spoken before about the amount of running Connor Barron does. It's maybe not bad to give him the odd rest now and again to let his legs recover.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Raskin and Diamandi are better. That's not to say I don't like Connor Barron. I think he's done very well, but for me, he's a great sub to have. At this point in time, no issues with him coming in games and getting rotation minutes, like you've mentioned. But yeah, I think I don't know. It's one of these things with team building. You're never really sure what the main thing is, the main issue is, the main positive. I think it's always a combination of lots of things. I can't sit here and say I think the manager has massively developed things tactically over the last month or so. I don't think that's quite the case. I think we are still wide open at points. The difference is you've got Nico Raskin doing an incredible amount of work every game, winning tackles back high up, covering the fullbacks, doing loads and loads of stuff that just wasn't getting done earlier in the season, or he wasn't doing last year. So I think we do still have some issues there in the middle in terms of covering space, but both of them have got the legs and the ability in there that it's maybe not been too much of an issue. But I think with Raskin coming in and then Egeman and Danilo, I think those are the main reasons for me why we're seeing an uptick in performance. It doesn't feel like we suddenly stumbled on something different. We're not really doing much different. It's just intelligent players able to play in the pockets, able to go 1-2s, able to go in behind, able to hopefully finish, although it wasn't really the case at the weekend. I think that's what we're seeing there. It's a byproduct of getting those ball players, if you like, or those attacking, energetic, creative players into the team.
Cammy, on that point that Adam makes, and it's a good one, that the manager has spoken about, I didn't have these options available early on the season, and he didn't, right? I agree with him about the striker thing, but Hadji and Egeman and Danilo were sitting not getting used at points, but they're in the team now, and I just think that the team now looks a wee bit more front foot because of that lineup, and I think it also sends a message to opposition teams as well when they come to Ibrox, that they look at the team and go, maybe a couple of months ago coming here, there's only maybe one or two players can hurt you. Now there's 5 or 6.
Yeah, and there's a far more of a fluidity now from the middle to front, which, I mean, definitely helps. Dundee's game plan clearly was to try and compress the middle of the park, but within their own half, which would have forced us to be able to go out probably a bit more wider than we would have liked. But the benefit of the players that you've just mentioned, Danilo and Egeman in particular, is that they will start to pull players. They will start to create space where ideally Dundee would like to have contained it. I don't think, if I'm being honest, David, that we would have been as comfortable across Saturday afternoon had we had a static striker like Cyril Dessers there, because I think it would have felt very much, well, you're going to have to get a pinpoint cross into him to be able to generate that. Whereas, as well as those two, Czerny and Hadji been able to try and penetrate as well and going towards goal, unlucky for a couple of attempts. it helps. It certainly helps. And also, there's some players which I think are now starting to come onto a game to give us a little bit more defensively. I think Robin Proper has had an upturn as well in the last few games, which has been beneficial. And it was interesting, and I don't know if you boys noticed this, but there were certain points as well where Raskin would sit and Proper would go slightly further forward. But the best thing I think at the moment just now is that we're so consistent with being able to recycle the ball and get it back into an attacking phase that any opposition team coming in to play against us now just know that they can't switch off. They just can't lose concentration for a minute, because Rangers will generate opportunities from pretty much through the left, the middle and the right. So it's definitely been a huge benefit to us having some of those players available again.
Yeah, I mean, we've mentioned on here before, the thing I like about Igaman, Hadji, Danilo is even when they're not at the best, and they weren't on Saturday, is that they try things and they link up and they move. And let's be honest, Adam, this game, it was the old Achilles heel of finishing, really, because this game we should be sitting here talking about a 4-0 routine home victory. The fact that it was live up to the last minute, even the manager seemed a bit annoyed by that at the end, because this is a game, we've hit the crossbar 4 times, but we really should have put that game away by an hour. That game should have been done and dusted.
Yeah, I agree. I think the mood felt a little bit flat. Maybe
understandably
because of what's happened the week before. Yeah, I think without that being there, I think that game, even though it's a 1-0, I think we should have been out of sight. But then again, to be critical, there were a couple of Dundee opportunities, and when you turn games into, I said this before, when you effectively turn games into a basketball game, and it can be end to end at points, as it was for little bits of the second half. It just takes one mistake, one stroke of luck, or someone throwing something in from 30 yards, and you never know. It's a different situation. So that's why it is so crucial to finish the chances. What I will say is, I've been banging on about this for years, David, you'll know from when we've done the pre-match or the post-matches at Ibrox, the type of chances that are being created are different now for me. How many times did we see at the weekend little 1-2s, somebody busting through and a cutback, and then it's a poor finish? Or Igaman's, for example, he probably should have done better with that. But those are the type of chances that I'm seeing us creating now, which gives us more hope for the future. There's still not ridiculously well-drilled patterns of play, but there are some absolutely starting to show. But it's those type of chances. We're not really relying on
individual brilliance
or balls getting flung into the box, or just having a shot from outside the box to try and break down teams. There's a bit more in there, and I think that's where Hadji, Danilo for the goal as well. You see just somebody that can move it quickly. Dessers would have took 4 touches before he laid that off to Czerny, and he'd have been offside. So just those little things, but the type of chances as well as more chances, I think is great. We just need to then get it in the net a bit more often. But yeah, I think that's given me a little bit of comfort just now.
Yeah, Cammy, let's talk then about officiating. And as I say, we're always fair on here. The linesman had 2 big calls and he got them both right. VAR, of course, checked them. I'll admit that when Basa Czerny ran through, I thought he's offside. Because to me, he looked yards offside. Then I was raging at him for taking it round the keeper, because Igaman was there for a tap-in. He better score from here, which he did. But I still didn't get too excited because I thought that's offside. But having seen it back, and obviously VAR checked it, it wasn't offside. The linesman got that right. Later on, Hadji had the ball in the net. He was offside, and the linesman got that one right as well. It's kind of nice to see that after the week we've had.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was going to be interesting to see as to how the officials would have approached this. Listen, I'm the same as you. When you watch the replay of the Czerny goal, I think you're wafer thin. I haven't had a chance to see if the line's been drawn, but it must have been very, very close. Adam makes a great point about Danilo being able to get the ball to his feet and then playing that pass with zero hesitation.
And Czerny knows it. That's the other thing as well. That's something that I don't think always happens when Dessers is there. Czerny is immediately on his bike because he knows he'll get this to me, and that's a big thing. That trust.
It is, yeah, absolutely. And we've spoken before about sometimes players may struggle to play that ball through to Dessers because they don't know if they're quite switched on to be able to make the run and to see the movement. And Czerny obviously was alive to it. And yeah, I was the same. You know, you're thinking to yourself, just get this chance finished. Come on, because make them make a decision later on, but just get it finished. There's an interesting one. I don't know if you boys will remember, but Egeman had a not dissimilar move where he was going to go, thought he was offside, didn't realise there was a guy behind him, had initially stopped his run and then started it, and he still got through.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting to me, David, that you can actually review these decisions and take the requisite amount of time to be able to make sure that the outcome is accurate. Long may it continue. But listen, a great phase of play and brilliant from Czerny. I think, like you say, he's shown some really good pace on that. And ultimately, although we might not have felt it in the stadium at the time, some great composure to round the keeper and finish it.
He's been impressive, Adam. I've mentioned this before a few weeks ago. After Malmo and Lyon, and a particularly bad day at Hampden, I think a lot of us, and I include myself in this, I'm not casting aspersions on other fans. I thought, dud. Don't know why we've brought him in. He's not going to contribute much. And I remember seeing him actually in a press conference after he got the 2 goals against St Johnstone. He was really down. And he's like, I'm still kicking myself about those misses. I can do better. I know I can do better.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's really done it. I mean, he's stepped up, and the performances he's put in. The thing I like about Czerny is, look, he's not perfect, okay? I think physically at times he could be a wee bit more robust. He's clearly not going to. There's no point me getting annoyed about it anymore because he doesn't engage physically. But he does make things happen.
He absolutely does. And I think there's obviously different styles of wingers, different ways to use your physicality. I was on the fence the first couple of times I seen him. Remember the goal against Motherwell he did, and then it just felt like he was trying to do that all the time, similar to what Matondo does on the other side, cutting in and having a dig. But then it's almost like he's really tried his best not to, and at times probably to a fault, where there have been a couple of games where he's constantly wanted to go on his outside on the right hand side. But I like that now. I think he's got a nice balance, a nice variation. He's very clever. He links up well with the midfielders. Clearly already, we've seen a few times he's had a really good relationship with Danilo as well. So no, I like him. It's just, there's always a problem with loan players, isn't it? You get one in who does really well, and either they're the right age and therefore too expensive in the case of maybe Abdallah Sima or others like that, or else you get someone like Czerny and you're thinking, oh, do we want to spend however many millions it's going to be next summer to bring somebody in who will be 28 before Halloween, and what about the player trading model, all that sort of stuff? For me, I think he has been really, really good. What I'm not a big fan of, and I think I kind of said this round about the cup final as well, is Bayrami, Hadji and Czerny all playing together, because I think at times it can get a little bit samey, particularly with Hadji and Bayrami. But if you've got one of them in the 10 and a Cortez or even an Egeman out on that left-hand side, and then a Danilo or someone else up top, I think that gives you a really nice balance. But I think he's shown great qualities. He's scoring loads of goals. I'm actually quite surprised just how many he's got, and he's contributing really, really well. So yeah, for me, he's been Egeman's sort of getting the plaudits, isn't he, over the last month or so, just because he's appeared and scored those big goals. But I think Czerny's definitely been up there with the player of the year so far, for sure.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Czerny, Suter, and as you say, Egeman will arrive on that scene. Did miss a good chance on Saturday, Cammy. Just a wee reminder that he is young, the one where he hit the bar. But I think we can forgive him that due to the contribution that he's been putting in over the last few months. Cyril Dessers came on and hit the bar, but got, it's fair to say, a fairly muted reaction. There was some light boos, but I'm never quite sure why people do that. I get that, they're unhappy with him, but it doesn't help. I'm more a fan of, if you want to criticise a player, do it to your mates, do it offline or whatever. It's unlikely to bring him on and make him play better. But what it does say is he really does need to go, because he's ran out of road at Rangers, I think.
Yeah, he has. There was a couple of boos from where I was in the main stand, and to be honest with
Cammy,
you,
that's disgraceful. You should know better.
Trust me, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. But it's exactly the point you've just made, because that game's sitting at 1-1, for example, or let's say it comes.
Well, it was only 1-0. I mean, but it wasn't 1 at that point.
That's exactly it. And do you honestly think that's going to motivate him to be able to try and grab us a winner at that stage? He was obviously very unlucky with hitting the bar, but there's obviously all this noise, David, that's kind of fell out from the penalties in the League Cup final. And listen, I'm not going to criticise our fans in terms of their own personal opinions. I respect all of that, but I would try and remind people that if a game was in the balance and it wasn't done and dusted, I think the contest was pretty much over, but the scoreline didn't reflect that, despite the number of chances that we had. I think you're right. I think that the time has kind of come for him to really consider his options. He may go to another club and he may become their main man, and he was ours through lack of options for a good wee while. It may be the case that this is the kind of motivation that he needs, and I'm not necessarily saying he's put his head down, because he has still featured. He's been limited, but I also don't think that's anything new now that Danilo and Egeman are involved. It's very frustrating, because again, I think that you look at the Egeman chance that you just mentioned, and I think most people would have thought that's like something Cyril Dessers would do. So
that's exactly what people round about me said, yes.
And in fairness, so it can happen to anyone, right? It can. But Dessers carries so much weight with them now from the fan base that it just feels like it's a real struggle to really get behind him now. And I think typically, as history's kind of shown us, I think it's very difficult to turn that around, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I agree, Adam. I just think once the crowd has made their mind up on you, and they have, then go, because you're not going to win them back.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The time was the summer. If we're being brutally honest, rumours of that bid coming in and the player not wanting to go. Fair enough, I guess. Someone wants to knuckle down for their chance, but yeah, it feels like we don't know the workings inside, but it possibly could have, other things could have happened that maybe the player felt like he could actually move on, similar to some others. I know Hadji was obviously frozen out for a bit, Cantwell. Lammers was kind of told in no uncertain terms as well. I think that he was moving on and he was quite happy with it. So maybe something could have been done there. And I totally get the early part of the season, scoring goals and things, that's fine. But the money that was being rumoured for Dessers, you would back. I would hope that the recruitment team to bring in someone who was going to get those goals and give us a bit more. The thing that the manager said something really interesting the other day about Egeman. People were questioning why we're spending almost £2 million on someone like that in the summer, and it's a risk and blah blah blah. I mean, that's fair, but we never seen him pretty much until December, really. I know he scored a couple of goals, but I think Halloween was maybe his first start. So I think it's fair to question that in terms of the transfer market in the summer, because we needed players ready to go. Everyone knew that. It wasn't a secret. If that Dessers money could have been spent on someone who could have kept us within touching distance, maybe got us into the Champions League early on, while Egeman was still getting up to speed, while Danilo was still getting back to fitness, then that's fair enough. So for me, I think it's fine for players to be starting to turn it on now, but we sort of needed these guys to be available and ready to go July, August time, and they weren't, and it kind of feels a little bit like a wasted 6 months, certainly on the league front, as well as we've been doing in Europe. So yeah, I think it's kind of fair to look at it and say, well, you probably should have went in the summer and we could have used that money to, I don't know, get a Sima in or bring in another striker potentially that might have been the difference for us.
It feels a lot like the flip scenario of when you've got, and I'll look towards Alfredo Morelos for this, but when you've got strikers missing and have missed a third of the season, we've missed the first third, whereas we've seen previously that when strikers miss the final third, how much it can cost us. And that's where we are now. I mean, it's the situation in reverse. And it's interesting. I really do genuinely wonder where we would be if we had these guys at the start of the season, because I think the picture would look a lot different.
I think the problem that Rangers faced in the summer is that our trading model, don't laugh, didn't exist. It had been allowed to completely run into dirt, and they had to restart that with some young players. Whereas now you're looking at the side and you go, well, Jeffy, Igamani's attracting a fair bit of attention. Goals in the Europa League will do that, especially goals against an English side. Will do that for you. But it did mean we were short at the start of the season, which was the sort of reprehensible position that we found ourselves in. But Rangers did see it out to get the victory. Should have been more comfortable, but wasn't. Now, off the field, Rangers have made some changes. They announced a new CEO last month, and he started on Monday, and they announced a new chairman who also started on Monday. Be very clear from the club, Fraser Thornton is a non-executive chairman who will oversee, but the day-to-day running of the club will be done by Patrick Stewart. He did his first interview with RTV last week, was really just a hello. And Cammy, it's obviously far too early to tell positive or negative. I mean, his experience is good, and one thing I liked is he didn't speak in business speak, which we've had before. He seemed to be able to communicate quite normally without sounding like he just walked out of a boardroom. But they have a big job. Equally, though, they also have an opportunity where there isn't. I mean, there was, the whole thing had been hollowed out. They have a chance to put their own stamp on it in a way that you maybe wouldn't do going into an organisation where there was a culture already established.
And that's incredibly important. What will be interesting, because, listen, it's just a matter of timing, because I know that people had come in and said, is this farce with the penalty in the League Cup final going to be one of the first things in his agenda? And it won't be, because he has to come in and make his own assessment of the current state of play, and no one's going to be able to tell you that's running efficiently at the moment. So he's going to have to be able to fix a few of the broken things before he can really put the kind of groundwork into it. I liked his interview, in terms of what it was really just an introduction. It was, right, I'm here, I'm going to get to work, that's it, I'm fine. I didn't need someone coming in and been able to tell us about, short to long-term plans and been able to try and do the details, because he wouldn't have known that. He needs to be able to get his sleeves rolled up and get in with the bricks in terms of where things are running smoothly, because the club's not a complete disaster, but let's face it, plenty of it needs put back on the right track. He's going to be busy. There's absolutely no doubt around that. We've been rudderless for far too long. He also needs to be able, and this is something that I think that we all spoke about when we were in the recruitment for a CEO, he also needs to try and understand the kind of the political landscape within Scottish football, which is, that's a tough road to navigate. He's going to need some help along that, which I'm sure he'll get. But he strikes me, David, as just one of these guys who he'll pick it up quickly. Like, he won't need to be given too much guidance before he starts making his own assessments, and then he can then start hopefully being able to make some real impact in the role that he's got. I think, obviously there will be changes in terms of how the club's run. We might get to the stage where we just probably have to see out the season before we see anything majorly groundbreaking. But I do get the feeling from him that, ultimately, if you are not performing within your role, if you are not delivering, then, there will be changes.
Rangers had this bizarre policy, Adam, for years of areas weren't working, so they promoted somebody who was already in it. We need some grown-ups in there.
Oh, 100%. I think that's something we've been speaking about for a while. They can come in and fail. That's fine. It doesn't mean you just completely you don't bother rehiring. I think the people that are coming in, certainly the three that have been announced in the last week or so, absolutely zero questions from me in terms of credibility, history, all that sort of stuff. We know, similar to players, you could bring in somebody that everybody thinks is going to be an absolute sure thing. Just doesn't happen for a multitude of reasons. That could be the same here, but I don't think anybody would disagree that we're absolutely due something good's happening in terms of the boardroom side. So yeah, no issues with those. I am obviously quite interested to see what happens. The club didn't rule out another appointment in terms of the football executive, sporting director, whatever you want to call it, side to work above or beside Niels Coppin. I think that's key. I think having others in there as well, padding out the recruitment situation, especially if Coppin has moved up. I would assume we now don't have a head of recruitment or a chief scout. So those type of ones for me would be really interesting to see what we're actually going to plan to do for the next 4 or 5 years on the pitch. And then I'm sure there's lots to be done as well in terms of the academy and various other things that link us all together. So yeah, the first three, absolutely zero concerns. I do still feel like we're a little bit short in terms of experienced football people at quite high levels. So I'd be keen to get another person in there who can sort of join it all together and give Niels Coppin a hand, because that's a big, huge role for someone who hasn't done that before and was a youth scout 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I've said it before, Rangers have been understaffed for years, and I get it, because the idea was that they wanted to spend the money on the first team, but, sign one less wage thief and pay people to do the job that we need to do in the background, because I think it's been proven, not just by us, but you look at Manchester United, if you don't have the hierarchy right, if you don't have the structure, it's very difficult to succeed. You're kind of succeeding then despite the background. You look at clubs that have been winning things, it's because they're settled in the background, and everybody knows their job and gets on with it. It's not rocket science, but you need to do it. And Rangers have, I think, quite often tried to go from A to Z with it going through all the other letters, and that's been the problem. We've been trying to jump over the fence in one go rather than climbing it. But he's got a big job, but we all wish him the best. Now then, lads, before we finish up for today, it was our 125th anniversary at Ibrox on Saturday, and maybe we were always going to have a narrow game because we wore a new kit, and generally speaking, when we do that, it doesn't go well. But that kit is an absolute beezer, by the way. They should just ditch this year's home shirt, in my opinion, and just continue with the heritage top. It is a cracker. But I just wanted to take a moment to ask you about some of your favourite Ibrox memories. We've all been going there for a long time. My first trip to Ibrox was in 1986. I'd been a supporter for a couple of years at that time, but my mum ruled I was too wee to go. And then 1986, I think just to get me at the house, I was so excited with Souness and Terry Butcher and whatnot that she allowed me to go. And we lost our first match. We were 2-0 up at half-time against Dundee United. Ali McCoy scored 2, and I was so happy, and my dad bought me a hot dog, and then we lost 3-2. But it didn't put me off going back, and I've been going ever since to Ibrox. So it's, as I pointed it to my wife, it's a relationship that's lasted longer than pretty much any other relationship in my life, with the exception of my parents. So I just wanted to take a moment to ask you for some favourite memories. I'll give you some of mine. And I wanted to start off with a fairly recent one, which was Leipzig. And that was the best night that I have ever had in Ibrox. It was emotional. It was draining. We went right through it. Adam, you were on up on the gantry with me that night. We were not quiet media people that evening, and the whole gantry was bouncing. There was a lot of, and I remember a guy from CBS in the US turning around to us at one point saying, "I've never seen anything like this. I cover American football, Wimbledon, Grand Prix, English Premiership. This is mad." And that 20 minutes afterwards will live with me forever.
Definitely. I'm not sure if it was just sort of being on the gantry, and obviously it's less sturdy, but I've never felt that shaken in the way that it did. The noise was incredible, just constant. Whoever decided to play the John Lundstrom song right after John Lundstrom scored will go down in legend, because that was just, spine tingling, I think, is the only way to describe that one. Even after it, seeing some of the players in the media bit and talking to Gio after the game, I think everybody was still in a state of shock. But that for me has to be number one in terms of Ibrox. It had everything that you would want. It had jeopardy. It had some great goals from Rangers coming back at the death, good saves, everything that you would kind of want from that type of game, overturning a deficit from the first leg as well. So yeah, for me that's absolutely top of I was going to say top of my Rangers memories, but I think maybe that 10 or 12 minutes in Seville will also take some topping. But certainly Ibrox it's number one for me.
Yeah, still, even thinking about it is goosebumps. And as you say, just that 20 minutes when we were all knackered, but felt like we'd played. And I'll always remember that in Leipzig after the game, the PR guy came up to me. He was a very nice man, and he said, "What did you think?" I said, "Well, you needed more than that." I said, 1-0's not enough. You don't know what you're walking into." And he went, "Look, we've played at Signal Iduna, we've played at Bayern Munich's ground." He said, the players are not going to be fazed by noise. I said, okay. And the week afterwards, when we were sitting in the press room, he walked up to me and went, "No, you were right." He says, "It's one thing hearing about it," he says, "but it was another hearing it." So just wonderful. Cammy?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll keep with a common theme, just sticking with Adam, because as I'm sure you'll remember, we were both in Club Europe for Legia Warsaw and the Alfie winner.
I think I'd paid for that, hadn't I?
Yeah, you probably did. Yeah.
No, I did.
Yeah.
I think subscribers paid, technically.
For those of you who don't know, that because we sponsor players and we sponsor match days and stuff, that every so often we get as part of your package, several £1,000, you get a hospitality day, and I very rarely go to them because I'm covering it for the site, so I'll let them go. Plus, I don't drink, and they very much do.
Yeah, that's fair. I would have taken advantage of it, I think it's fair to say. But yeah, I remember sitting out in the kind of seats, just a little bit in front of where you normally would when you're out in hospitality, and I remember the stadium physically shaking at that point as well. That was a brilliant atmosphere. You go back to Parma, you can talk about the 2018 Ryan Jack Old Firm winner. Leipzig has to top it. I'm not going to suggest that there's one that rivals it, if I'm being honest, or comes close to it. But listen, it's we've talked about it on our Patreon site a lot in terms of how much Ibrox means to us and the special memories that we all have for it. And listen, you two are the same as me, everyone listening to this, but you always just get a wee fuzzy feeling whenever you see Ibrox for the first time on match day, and it never goes away from you. Ever goes away from you. But yeah, some incredible moments in that stadium, and like I say, you could go through a load of them, but it'll be interesting if when you talk to people about it, what theirs is, and a lot of them, we spoke about it on the site as well, a lot of them are about family and about people who were with you at the time. And I just think it's really interesting that the three of us have just spoken about this, and we think about the people that was with us in those particular moments and stuff as well, and that's what it means to everybody.
Yeah, I told this story on one of our live shows, the last one that we did, so apologies to you two because you've heard it, but I stopped drinking in summer 2009, July, and my friend phoned me up, first game of the season, said, "You coming?" And I was, I'm only a couple of months into recovery, so I was like, I don't know, because Cammy, I drank a lot on match days back in those days. It was,
impressively so at the time, it has to be said.
Yeah, out on the Friday night, home on the Sunday night, kind of thing. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to go. And he's like, yeah. So he came, picked me up, and we went to a cafe before it for a cup of tea rather than to the pub. And I was we played Falkirk, and we won 4-0. And I just remember when one of the goals went in, everybody was bouncing. I just turned around and I went, "You know what? I'm going to be all right. I can do this." And it was because I was where I was supposed to be. And it doesn't change no matter what happens in your life. It's always the place that you feel that you're supposed to be. And I just thought, yeah, I can do this. And Ibrox gave me that. And that's, why it matters so much. It is more than a stadium. It's our home. Anyway, folks, let us know what your favourite memories of Ibrox were in the comments, and I just want to thank you from all the lads and ladies here at Heart and Hand for your continued support. Without you, we couldn't do this, so thank you very, very much for listening. We will be back next week. Cammy will be here with a Heart and Hand extra in between, and I'll be back to look at what happened at the weekend and preview the Old Firm game. Lads, listen, thank you so much for giving up your time. I know it's a particularly busy time of the year with family, and for both of you giving up your time, I really appreciate it. So my thanks first of all to Cammy.
A pleasure as always.
And my thanks to Adam.
Yeah, no worries. Hope everyone has a great Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year.
Merry Christmas, everyone, from everyone at Heart and Hand. Take care. Bye-bye.